Welcome to Okoboji Broadcast, everybody. A bright sunny day in the Iowa Great Lakes. I'm Jeff Thie here. We're at Clare Wilson Park, newly renovated thanks to Imagine Okoboji, Imagine Iowa Great Lakes. A very dear friend of mine, Mr. Aubrey LaFoy, is here with us today. He's got his 8th book that has just come out. It is entitled Over the Waterways of the Iowa Great Lakes. Aubrey, thanks for taking some time with me, my friend.
Thank you.
You know, you and I have even got talking about history. You and I got a little history together. Years ago when I started Lakes Television, you and I and Claire J. DeCoster went all around the Lakes area and produced a Lakes History show.
Right.
That was a lot, you know what, and I think I've always been kind of a history nut, but talking to you and Claire and listening to you, and you being a former teacher, even a dimwit like me could not help but learn from your passion and your love for this area and knowing where things were and the history behind it. So we had a lot of fun doing that.
Okay.
Let us talk about, and I just want to list down some of your books here before we go any further. Down Memory Lane of the Iowa Great Lakes, Meandering Down Memory Lane of Iowa Great Lakes, Iowa Great Lakes Revisited, Strolling Down Memory Lane of the Iowa Great Lakes, Reminiscing about the Iowa Great Lakes, and Smoke Over the Waters of the Iowa Great Lakes.
Right.
You're kind of a prolific writer, my friend.
Thank you.
But let's talk about this one. You told me, we were emailing, and you said you've been researching this for a couple of years?
At least 2 years.
At least 2 years?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this book. And I would think you already had printed everything about the Iowa Great Lakes, but now we've got this one. Tell us about it, Aubrey.
Well, no, that's one thing so unique about this area, that there are so many things going on around here, you never get all the history.
No.
And every time I did, well, I don't have, but well, yes, I'll go back there and look that over. And yes, there's something new there. Just example, like right where we're sitting now, that is called the Clare Wilson Park.
Right.
And it was started way back in the 30s by the Okoboji Protective Association.
Right.
And the president at that time was Clare Wilson. And they thought, well, I can remember that was just a mess. People threw old stoves and refrigerators and boats and everything else right below all this nice place we got today.
Yeah.
And you know, you come by here and say, gee, that looks terrible. Well, anyway, the OPA along, and they got Fred Wilson with the boatworks here to supervise it, and they put all this landfill over on the top of it. And there's actually, when I wrote the book about the steamboats, there's one of the steamboats down underneath here, all this stuff. It was called the Sunbeam.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was one used up quite extensively up in Spirit Lake when they used to have their Chautauqua meetings up there.
Okay.
And it hauled people back and forth from the highway there over to the Chautauqua, which now is Gilbert Park.
Right.
That's right. Okay. So, you know, you just get started on one thing and it just leads to another, and you know, and there you go. So.
You know, and when I was talking to Jonathan Reed last week, I just made the comment, every square inch, every square foot has got history in it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it's just amazing when you think about it. So let's talk more about this book, because you told me, Aubrey, that you're talking about resorts, personalities, bridges, and even the exploration of the lakes area.
Yes. Well, as we're sitting here right now, Dixon County is divided up into 2 parts, and one is the south part and the other is the north part.
Right.
And our embryo cord between the two is right here.
We're standing right in the middle of it.
We're right in the middle of it. And if this is not, you know, if you can't get through the bridge up here at Okoboji, the bridge, you're in trouble. You know, we're stuck down in Milford or the Arles Park. You have to go clear around the west side of the lake or clear around the east side of the lake. And I got a good story about that. In 1929, they tore out the last swing bridge, which was over at the Okoboji Bridge here.
Sure.
And my grandfather, his name was Sam Holcomb, lived down in Milford, and he had some business to do up at Spirit Lake. Well, Sam wasn't the most patient guy in the world. So he came here, and here's the roadblock. So what did Sam do at this time? It was a railroad, Milwaukee Railroad went through here.
Sure.
And so Sam drove his, I believe it was a Model A. He drove it across the railroad trestle of the Spirit Lake. Now that makes a good story, but I never heard how he got back.
Made his own bypass.
I don't know. And when I was in India in World War II, I thought of that because one day I was driving a truck, and we were on a kind of a convoy. We came along in India, and here was a road, and the road ended right up at a trestle, and the trestle was about a quarter of a mile long. You know, we kind of, now what do you do now? Well, the guy said, well, we'll drive across that trestle. Well, I thought of my grandfather all the time. I was bump, 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 you know, going across that, and the other way, the other road picked up. You know.
Well, we learn by watching sometimes.
Yeah, I know. That's what them guys, they said, well, you know, that's going to be a deal. I said, well, my grandfather did it, so you might as well. Okay. The worst thing about it was one fella, at the same time, he drove a horse and buggy across there, and he got about a third of the way over, and he thought, what am I doing out here with my horse? You know, but by golly, he made it though.
He got across. He didn't try to throw the horse in reverse and get out of there.
No, he couldn't turn around. Anyway, so that's why these little stories are out here, and I always maintain that you go around, you know, West Okoboji or East too, and you pick any cottage along the whole area, and there's a history on each one of those.
Yeah.
And Art Bascom used to be an old realtor, and Art Bascom on the east side of West Okoboji, he could tell you about every cottage, what was in it, well, you know, and so on like that. He was an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Except the one day he and Ledoux, when they opened up the Brooks Golf Course over here,
Okay.
he and Mr. Ledoux decided they'd be the first ones to play that course. So boy, they got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and to get in line so they could play at the first. Well, they played the Brooks up there, and I don't, you know. And so after they got all through, you know, Art with his encyclopedia mind, I said, "And what was your score, Art?" I don't remember. So that's one thing I do. At my age, I'm missing all those early people that were around the lake here. You know, I used to ask Fred Wilson's wife questions, you know, or people like that. And they aren't around anymore. They can't. But so that's one advantage I have. Been getting 95. Is there's not too many around that can contradict me anymore.
Yeah. If they challenge you, you could say, "How old are you?"
Yeah, right.
But that also, Aubrey, makes a point of how important it is with this book, your previous 7, documenting and finding the factual information to pass on to the next generations of the Iowa Great Lakes.
Well, there's just a, you know, people have asked me, how can you find so much? Well, to me, there's never ending thing, and that's like in this book here. I took bridges. Now, you know, Dixon County has more lakes in it. It has 22 lakes, and most people don't even know. They know East Okoboji, Spirit Lake, and West Okoboji, and maybe Center Lake or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more than that. There's, you know, 22 lakes in it. Not only that, there's according to the Dixon County engineers, there's 68 bridges in Dixon County.
Is that right?
Yeah.
68 bridges around the area.
And you know, because there's a lot of creeks and there's rivers and everything else, you know.
Yeah.
One thing, talk about that, the swing bridge, which was down here, was taken out in 1929.
Okay.
And it was put down on the Little Sioux River, down here by the Lutheran church that's down south of Milford, you know, a little bit farther down on that river there. And it was there for a long time in pretty good shape. And then a heavy rain came and it kind of got, but anyway, Thank heavens Butch Parks rescued the thing, and now he has it over here in the Parks Marina.
Sitting there, yeah, right
Yeah,
on the east end of the marina.
Right,
there.
right. So that's, and and I forgot to think. Now I was born in '25, and that was taken out in 29. Then I must have gone across that,
Yeah.
swing bridge.
Sure.
But of course, who can remember when they're 3 or 4 years old?
Yeah. Well,
my folks did a lot of visiting and so on. They had relatives up in Spirit Lake. The Weeds that live on the south end of Big Spirit Lake was my grandmother, Georgia Hookham. It was her sister.
okay.
Like that.
Yeah, just it's amazing the connections that you have,
Yeah.
throughout this area. How long did you teach, Aubrey?
I taught 36 years.
36 years, and that was all in the Okoboji school
No,
system?
I didn't. I taught 3 years out in Greeley, Colorado, where I went out to get my master's degree.
Okay.
And I got that in 1950.
Okay.
And I taught in Greeley there for 3 years. But then and Connie, we just couldn't stay away from here.
Had to get back to Okoboji?
Well, not of that. But Connie's an only child, and her folks missed her, and my father had just passed away.
Okay.
He was only 57.
Oh my goodness. Sure.
Yeah. Had an aneurysm on his aorta. But we moved back, and then we thought, well, where should we go? Well, I had a friend of mine, one of the Northern girls, who taught over to Mason City, and on a Christmas card she said there was a vacancy there.
Ah.
So I wrote and asked for the application, and anyway, make a long story short, I got into the Mason City School District.
Okay.
And then I taught there in the juniors high school for 25 years. But then I decided I just didn't want to stay there that 5 or 6 more years, so I came back over here to the lakes, and I got a job over to Esterville, and then I taught Esterville the last 7 or 8 years.
Okay. All right.
Drove back and forth. So.
Well, at one point did you start thinking, someone has to start documenting the history of the lakes area to the degree that you have with 8 books?
Well, I tell you, one day Milford was having their centennial.
Okay.
I think it was in '92.
Okay.
And I met Doris Hemphill just walking across the street, and there was Doris, and she said, Aubrey, she said, I've been writing little history articles about Milford. Do you think you could write a couple? I said, yeah, I guess I could write a couple. So, so I wrote 3 or 4, and then about Milford down there. Of course, that's where I was born. I grew up, and I knew a lot about it. So then there were 2 young ladies that were running the Milford Mail at that time, and they said, Aubrey, that was so well received. Why don't you continue writing? So I thought, okay, well, yeah. So anyway, so I said, okay. So I wrote an article every week for at least 10 years.
Right.
And then after that, then moved up to Dixon County News, and then I started writing for the Okobojian. So I'm still writing.
Still writing, yeah.
I think I probably have about 1,000 articles
Oh my
that I have
gosh.
about the, and
Yeah.
along the way I've collected postcards, pictures, and so on. This book, by the way, has 217 photos in the book.
Oh my goodness.
So, and some of the articles in there I think are really interesting. There's, growing up in Milford, I didn't know all that much about Spirit Lake.
Right.
When I was a kid, it's like today, if you're going to drive to Des Moines, that would be like about thinking from Milford to Spirit Lake.
Well, exactly.
It
wasn't just the quick hop in the
No,
car and
no,
zoom up the
no.
highway and boom, you're in Spirit Lake.
Yeah.
It was a trip.
Anyway, I got to looking at Spirit Lake, and you can't get to the north end of Spirit Lake to like Minnewacan Park up there
Right.
without going over a bridge at Sandbar. There's 2 bridges there now.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing. Well, on that west side, there used to be they call a Buffalo Run bridge there.
Okay.
It was torn down about 1910, I think, or something like that. And there's a culvert there now. It goes into Hottest Lake there. and so on like that. Well, so there's a number of places in the north end of Big Spirit, and that leads one thing to another. The mini walk-on park, that's a story all by itself.
Yeah.
It was built by the CCC boys in 1933.
Right during the Depression.
Yeah, right there. And then they had to get across there from west to east. They put in the North Shore Road. That's all fill. You know, it's that road there now, and makes it real well. And they blacktop it, and you can fish on both sides of it, and you know, it's really a wonderful thing. But I started I started researching that and trying to find out where to get the fill. I never could find out where they got the fill from, right around there someplace. And the trucks that they used, and a good friend of mine, Steve Avery, kind of clued me into what the dump trucks were. You know, they weren't the dump trucks we got today.
Right.
But anyway, they put the fill in there, and was done by a company out of Sioux City.
Okay.
But they did it so like that.
I mean, and just imagine, you know, you say they're not like the dump trucks today. Any idea how much time it took them to do that project?
Actually, they got it all done in one summer.
Wow.
And then they had the CCC boys who were at the mini walk-on there.
Okay.
They have participated in rip-wrapping and doing some work there too.
Okay.
They also built a bridge that goes across from Mini Walk-on Park over to the other side. And at that time, the water was low. I mean, all the lakes were just terribly low.
Right.
And they built that bridge. In fact, they built two bridges. Another bridge, just like it, was built over Gillies Beach.
Okay.
But it only lasted about 3 or 4 years because the water came up and, you know, it was gone.
And it was gone.
It sat there for a while.
So did a lot of those CCC projects simultaneous, like Gull State Park and so forth, did they all kind of in the same time stream, or were some of them set apart?
Yes, the CCC boys were down in Milford at Camp Okoboji. It was on the north end of Milford.
Okay.
And that's where they were. They would be well over 100 and some young men there.
Wow.
And that was quite a deal because they could, from 18 to 21, that was the age of those fellas.
Yeah.
Young guys, and they furnished them a place to stay and food, and they gave them old Army uniforms, and they got $30 a month. And most of them only kept about $5 or $6, and most of them sent the rest of it home.
Yeah.
So that didn't have a lot of money to spend, but I can vaguely remember them in there, but they never caused any trouble. I mean, they were up to the north end up there and so on like that. Amazing
and interesting times. And so, any surprises in this book that might catch somebody? I didn't know that.
Well, one really surprised me, and I'm saying this facetiously, but when they were trying to, prior to 1933, there was no property on the lake that was, it was all owned by private citizens. There was no place for the public to go,
right,
except Arnold's Park and Terrace Park or something like that, you know. And so that was really a step forward, was to try to get a state park. And when they got Gull Point over there, they fit around and tried to get, and a lot of the money they raised is money, and they had a name it, I lost the name, but he's he owned a lot of that property over there.
Okay.
And when they got all through it, he gave them a good share of the lakefront at Gull Point for $1.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, and then they bought 4 or 5 lots right on Gull Point, which extended the park as it is today.
Sure.
So if you can imagine, it was well over 500 or 600 lakeshore property there. and for the price that they paid for it, and you think of today when it's
I can't even comprehend, Aubrey.
I got my calculator out and I figured it out. You know,
I don't have enough fingers and toes. I know
yeah,
that much
I mean,
figure
you
that
know,
out.
it's millions of dollars it'd be worth today.
Yeah.
And the same way is true. They over at Pikes Point, that was about a year earlier. They had the Iowa Fish and Game
Right.
bought that property. And I remember talking to a fellow here in Arnold's Park that worked on that, and they kind of interesting. They didn't pay him in money. They gave him kind of what would you call them, coupons or something like that, and that's how they worked it out. But anyway, I mean, those are just those little things. And talk about Pikes Point. At one time, that's where the first Okoboji Yacht Club was.
Okay. That's where it started. Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, there's a couple of the old pilings still over there on the south side of Pikes Point there.
Yeah.
I went up and got some pictures of them and so on like that.
Well, like we said, every step you take, every stroke you take out in the lake, there's history here, and you've covered a lot of it in your 8 books. This one is over the waterways of the Iowa Great Lakes. Where's it available, Aubrey?
You can buy it at both of the museums, the Maritime Museum and the Dixon County Museum, and it is at the Barn Swallow and Books and Things.
Okay.
And they can also buy it from me if they need to.
Get a hold of you.
Give me $25 and I'll send it to you, and that pays for the postage and the tax.
Okay.
So like,
Will you sign a little Aubrey LaFoy?
Oh yeah, I'll sign it. I'll put anything on you want. Okay.
Well, Aubrey, my friend, I thank you for your passion for the history of our beautiful area. Thank you for your dedication to teaching, and I thank you for your service to our country as well.
Well, it's a labor of love, because I just love to do it, and you know, there's a lot of things you can't do when you're 95. You can't run races, you can't bicycle, you can't do a lot of it, but you can do a lot of research, and research today is much easier than it was 10 or 15 years ago.
Yep.
With the internet and the Google and that, you know, you can get pictures, you can get information. And when I first started, I spent a lot of time in the Spirit Lake Library looking at their old, what do you call them, films and so on like that.
Yeah, the microfilms.
Microfilms.
Yep.
I have another one. I was interesting, a little family history, but I was going through that, and I got way back about 1903. I was looking for something, and here was a little article that friends and relatives and would be saddened to hear of the death of Lou Holcomb. He died in the state of Mississippi. Mississippi? What's my great-grandfather doing in Mississippi? Well, his name is Lou Holcomb. They homesteaded up on the east side of Big Spirit Lake.
Right.
And then he was sheriff one term here, but then he took his family and went first to Kansas. Then he was in the Oklahoma land rush.
Oh my gosh.
And I visited some of our relatives down there in Oklahoma too, and you know, you think, why would they leave here and go down there? But they did.
And they did.
But anyway, as a little kid, you hear you can feel things, you know. You don't. But I remember talking about my great grandfather, and it was kind of quiet. Nobody said a whole lot, you know.
Okay.
Well, anyway, I think Lou left his family and went with somebody down into the state of Mississippi. That's where he died.
Oh, even our own family history can be kind of interesting.
Well, family history is that's another story.
Well, we appreciate you sharing it all with us, Aubrey. And you got another one in mind? You got a 9th book in your head?
Well, I've been thinking about one, yes.
Well, we'll just have to look forward to that. My friend, thank you.
You betcha.
For taking time with me, and thank you for all that you do with our history of our beautiful Iowa Great Lakes.
Oh, it's just, you know, it's a gem. We just had a fella here from Mesa, Arizona for a couple of days. He was from New York, and then he's in Arizona, and he said, I didn't know anything like this was in you know, he said, I did Iowa. I didn't think it had anything, you know, except cornfield,
Corn
and
beans,
beans.
yeah.
But,
And we're so lucky we do, aren't we? All right, Aubrey LaFoy has been our guest. His book again is called Over the Waterways of the Iowa Great Lakes. That's book number 8. Look for the previous 7. You can find them different places, and Aubrey will be happy to get you a copy as well. We thank Aubrey LaFoy for being here with us, and we thank you for watching us right here on Okoboji Broadcast. Okoboji Broadcast with Jeff Thee is brought to you in part by the headquarters of the University of Okoboji is at the Three Suns, open Monday through Saturday 10 to 5 and Sunday noon to 4. Last Touch Painting and Cleaning, providing interior, exterior, and house painting and professional cleaning services in Spirit Lake. Okoboji Mattress Company, 1 mile west of the junction of Highway 9 and 71 in Spirit Lake. Bank Midwest, dream big, plan wisely, live well. And Ducky's Marine and Motorsports Repair in Spirit Lake. Lakes Regional Healthcare and Avera Partner. Brand's Law Office in Spirit Lake. RUTHVEN Locker, where carnivores are welcome on Hill Avenue in Spirit Lake. Beck Engineering in Spirit Lake. Be Radiant Laser Skin Studio, newly located in the Okoboji Plaza in Okoboji. And by Quest Wealth Management, a financial advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services. Advisors Jan Spielman, AJ Spielman, and Erica Wachholz.